Hi and welcome to the Stark UK podcast. Today we're going to be talking about mental resilience through the eyes and the experience of two young men that are about to undertake an incredible challenge, but also thinking about what we as a business can learn about being more resilient. My name is Kev Geoghegan and I'm delighted today to be joined by Jamie and Adam, the crew of Secondary Fun, and Toby, their mental resilience coach. First of all, tell us what this challenge is.
Well, thank you very much for having us, first of all. We are going to be rowing across the Atlantic in 2 months' time, basically.
I mean, rowing across the Atlantic, when you say those three words, it sounds pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to...
Doesn't feel real, does it?
No. It's hard to imagine, really, because it's going to take so long and it's so far. It's like a quarter of the way around the world. You can't see it all in one go.
It's incredible. Most people think about flying across the Atlantic and they think, oh God, that's a 6-hour flight. Not ready for this. But how long do you think it's going to take you then? What's your target?
We'd like to do less than 50 days. So it's quicker ways of getting there, obviously. But 50 days we'd be really happy with. But some people take upwards of 60, 70. So it all depends kind of on the weather as well and stuff like that. But yeah, 50 would be the goal.
It's referred to as the world's toughest row. Is that just simply because of the length of the race, or what do you think is going to make it so tough?
Well, it's also considered like one of the hardest endurance events on the planet. So it's just, I think it just encompasses that really. It's just tough.
I mean, that's all you can say sometimes. You're doing this for charity, though. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about the charities that you're going to be supporting.
So supporting Mind, Dementia Adventure and T21. So obviously Mind, everyone knows, national charity, helping with mental health. And then T21 and Dementia Adventure, two charities like close to us, a bit smaller, kind of within the areas that we live. So I chose Dementia Adventure, just supports those with dementia and their carers, and takes them out and kind of on holidays and in experiences, kind of in later life.
And then I chose T21. It's a charity local to me that runs a cafe and they provide job opportunities and activities for young adults with Down syndrome.
And do you have like a target in mind that you want to raise?
So we've set ourselves the goal of raising £10,000 while we're actually on the row itself. But I think as a project overall, we'll be closer to 30 or 40,000 where it currently stands. But hopefully we're exceeding to blow £10,000 out of the water while we're away, and
hopefully it's the only thing that gets blown out the water when you're on this row.
Yeah, hopefully.
I've got a couple of questions actually. This is from my 9-year-old son who is very curious, Callan. He said, first of all, the name Secondary Fun. Where does that come from?
Well,
it's a marketing disaster because we put a pun in it, but it basically when we first started the project, we all met up in Oxford, and we were just sat in a pub and we were trying to figure out the name and all the bits that you need to do at the start of a project. And we basically kind of, Type 2 Fun is kind of fun afterwards. And at the time we were going to go Type 2 Fun, but we weren't raising money for diabetes and we thought it sounded a bit too similar. So we went for Secondary Fun instead. And it kind of encompasses kind of looking back on it at the end and it kind of being fun in hindsight. And maybe kind of in the moment, it won't always be the best experience that you're up against.
But we're trying to turn that Type 2 Fun or Secondary Fun into Type 1 Fun and enjoy it as much as we can.
At the same time.
Yeah.
At the same time, exactly. And that leads into the second question, which was, I would imagine that you'll be rowing together in tandem most of the time. But Callum was very curious, when it comes to night time, do you take the nights off or do you row in shifts during the dark hours? So
we'll be in shifts day and night. We won't get much more than an hour's sleep at a time. That's at best. We'll be donating. So we'll do 6 2-hour shifts every day, 2 hours on, 2 hours off. So someone will always be on the oars at all times. And then we'll donate hours if we've got, there isn't much to do. I suppose in the days we'll donate hours because we'll be awake. And then at night, if it's scary because we can't see anything and if it's particularly big seas, we'll be probably more inclined to donate hours, I think, with each other.
Now, Toby, I don't know about you, but having an hour or so sleep, I start to get a little bit bad-tempered, a bit crabby. These guys are going to be in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So how much preparation goes into the mental side of this, on top of the physical training the guys have been doing?
Yeah, we've started working together, I think probably 6 months ago, February, March time. And yeah, so we've done sort of sessions since then, on and off kind of thing. And yeah, it's all been about them sort of creating their own sort of story and understanding themselves and each other as well. And then sort of working out how they can best work together, what sort of they need to do and have in place for when they're out there. Like if they fall out or something like that, how do they communicate and get around that? And then yeah, just about sort of how they can interpret emotions and thoughts, and if things go wrong, how can they mentally deal with that when they're out there? That's kind of what our work together has been about in preparation. Yeah.
It's kind of one of those things, you don't really, you think about the physical strength side of things and the endurance part that you're talking about, but emotional intelligence is not something I think most people would think about as part of the package. This, I mean, is it, you guys obviously are friends, you're going to be relying on each other quite a lot, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the main thing with this is really it all stems actually from the mind. And actually, you can be the strongest person in the world, but if your mind falls apart, you're not going to make it across. So I think that kind of shows that, like, yeah, the mental side of this challenge is actually the main challenge over anything else, really. And I think that stems as well, actually, not just in between the actual row itself, but actually the preparation to get there in the first place. Like this year alone has been so hard just to even get to the start line. So I think it actually stems from kind of the whole project and not just actually the row itself, which I think people generally focus on. But it really is actually a project from day one over 3 years to get to the end of the race.
I mean, have you visualized kind of being when you're say at the midpoint in the race, where the closest land is perhaps 1,000 miles away from you? Have you kind of visualized, well, what would I do in this scenario if Adam and I did fall out about somebody hasn't tied a rope properly, or?
Well, I wouldn't want to sort of try and predict an argument, but I don't know. I don't think I have visualized that as such. I think I just try and practice how I respond to things rather than letting my reactions take over, and then sort of the more I sort of try and practice that, the more natural I'm hoping that to become, really. So try and avoid situations where there might be friction.
Yeah. I mean, there's one thing, conflict resolution is one thing, but actually trying to avoid conflict. Is that something that you've been working on with the guys as well, to think about how perhaps they react to each other on that kind of emotional level?
Yeah, I think we've kind of taken the stance that we know things are going to go wrong. There are going to be hard times. It's not just going to be like a one straight line to the finish line. So it's more around sort of understanding, when one of them's upset with the other one or something goes wrong, how they react in different ways and what each other's kind of thinking. And then best way for them to sort of communicate after that and sort of get through it and keep going and doing what's best in the current situation. So it's not necessarily, because it's so unpredictable what they're doing, we don't know what's going to go wrong, but something probably will go wrong. So it's pointless kind of trying to predict and work on what that could be specifically. It's more about how do they then react in a constructive way with each other and find the best possible solution to keep going. Yeah.
And from your perspective then, how has that worked? Because you guys were mates already, but I guess you've gotten to know each other and understand each other a lot better since this process started.
Yeah, I think even with like the training, so we've been up in Hartlepool now for the last 4 months, every weekend, getting our hours in training. And yeah, there's a difference between knowing someone on a day-to-day basis and then knowing someone when they're absolutely in the pit of doom, like tired, hungry, and like just don't want to be there. So I think it is kind of just getting to know each other in like a whole nother level, which obviously the training at sea and kind of what we've been doing has been able to like implement kind of hopefully what it's going to be like and simulate as close to possible what it's going to be like in the ocean.
So have you both kind of developed any particular mechanisms then that you can sort of rely upon, that you've built up to, make sure that any kind of response you have to anything going wrong is kind of measured and doesn't set off the other one?
We've had a couple of things that we've worked on in terms of like having a debriefs and things like that, but a lot of it I think is very kind of fluid and kind of works within the whole kind of environment itself. Because as Toby's saying, it's so unpredictable. It's learning how to kind of cope with things individually and together and kind of acting for each situation. So I'd say we've kind of spoken about kind of debriefing moments. We do that. We've had a few instances at training. We won't go into too much detail on them, but where stuff has gone wrong.
Please do.
Where stuff's gone wrong, we maybe had a few arguments and some heated words. But like straight afterwards, you kind of look at each other and you go, what the hell are we doing? And like you just chat about it and just nip it in the bud as soon as possible and kind of don't let it dwell. Because especially when you're training, like if I'm hating Jamie for whatever reason and you just don't get it sorted quick, it builds and builds and builds and becomes a bigger problem. And then you have 2 hours at night in the dark, it's raining, you're cold, hungry, and I'm thinking, I'm annoyed, and then it just adds to the cauldron. Whereas obviously if you get that out of the way straight away, then you're only cold, hungry, and not annoyed. So it just takes one thing off the plate.
Exactly, 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
I mean, is this something that you have worked hard on with these guys then, or when you started working with them, were they already kind of advanced or mature in their thinking about this?
Yeah, they were very aware of everything that kind of they were aware of their differences personally, so they were kind of on that path already. And then I sort of introduced, we did a bit of ACT, I don't know if you heard of that, acceptance commitment therapy. So that's kind of a way of interpreting thoughts and emotions and events and actions and things. So we did a little bit of that using the framework. And that's kind of about if something goes wrong or if you're having a bad thought or emotion, it's kind of removing yourself from it. So not internalizing that moment or that thought, reminding yourself of like, what are we actually doing? What's the bigger picture here? Like they're rowing across the Atlantic and why they're doing it. And then kind of coming back to the present moment, thinking, okay, regardless of what's happened, what do we need to do right now that's going to benefit us? What's the best action to take? And then going forward and taking it. So that's kind of like the framework we've sort of worked on a bit. And I think, they can say if they found it useful or not.
It's definitely been useful. We kind of have our little phrase of one mind, don't we? We've got a little laminate on the boat that we can see at all times when we're rowing that says one mind, and that's been especially helpful for me framing things. I've never worked in a small team, a team as small as this before. Only 2 of us. You can't get any smaller than in a team really. So framing everything down to the finest, like small conversations in a one mind, in a like our boat is one organism kind of frame, then that's sort of I think it's been helpful.
I think it changes your perspective of how you interpret everything, because when it's one mind, you know that like it's for the intention of, well, we always call the boat the organism between ourselves, which is maybe a bit weird, but it's kind of for the intention of that organism to operate, rather than being kind of making yourself that one nucleus rather than 2 trying to operate the same cell. It's kind of how we've kind of envisioned the boat and how we work together, really.
How important is that? So the guys obviously have that kind of visual reminder. Is that something that works in kind of everyday life, for people to have something visual to just remind them?
Yeah, I mean, they came up with that themselves, and that wasn't something I suggested or anything. But I think it's really great because it removes like the ego from each other and their own personal sort of goals and things like that, and taking things personally, and it kind of brings everything together, that instead of separating everything, they're all in sort of one place together, and everything's connected. So everything they do is for the benefit of the team. And I think in everyday life, this can benefit bigger teams or like families, in workplaces, environment, things like that. It's a much better sort of way of thinking about things or interpreting situations. Yeah.
So would you say then that the work that you've been doing, obviously with this challenge in mind, has also built up your mental resilience and made you think differently about how you act outside of the rowing challenge when you're at work?
I would say so. Yeah, it's sort of going through. Well, we're not human. We're not expecting everything to be perfect. Doing one of the hardest things on the planet. So it's sort of. It feels weird to say and arrogant, maybe, but it sort of feels like gaining like another level of consciousness and looking at things from like a bird's eye view, because you can step back once you've gone through some hard things.
And I think you maybe don't notice it directly, but when you look back on things, there's certain situations that arose at the start of the project where it really hit us, and like we'd really be like, oh, that really sucked, and like you get quite upset about it, and then you have things that are far worse happen to you later on in the project. You just look at each other and go, whatever, and you just move on. And I think it's kind of that building that kind of those blocks of just kind of being like, that's happened, what do you do next? Rather than kind of, obviously you need to listen to your emotions, but it's like only using them for when they're kind of efficient and useful to actually have, where sometimes stuff happens and you actually just need to operate and just get a job done. And I think that's kind of the value in all of this. And I don't think we realised the value until we started doing all this work, how much difference it would actually make on reflection.
So it's rather than sort of dwelling on a problem or an issue, it's kind of looking for that solution and looking for it together as a team.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, team is the word here. You've obviously been working with the guys. You're not going to be on the boat with them when they set sail from La Gomera. These guys are really going to have to rely on each other, aren't they? For the best part of 2 months, they're going to be the only kind of other humans that they're going to have face-to-face contact with.
Yeah, it's going to be. I think really they'll learn a lot about each other. I think they have so far. And about themselves, but once they're out there, it's not going to be like a static process. They'll learn a lot about themselves and each other, and there'll be difficult moments and great moments, things like that. I think when they finish it and like reflect on it months or a year after, they'll kind of realise how much they've learned and developed and things. So it'll be a really good experience for them.
I mean, we obviously work in a very challenging industry. And while my colleagues are not necessarily going to go and row the Atlantic anytime soon, or if they have, they haven't announced it yet. But when we think of something like mental resilience, I think people tend to think of it being something that they work on their own. But it's being part of a team, isn't it? You develop mental resilience alongside other people.
Yeah, I think you can learn a lot from other people as well. So it's not sort of something you have to just do by yourself and internalize it and everything like that. You can share what you're going through with other people. They can give you ideas and listen. They're obviously better people. You know, you can trust certain people more than other people to sort of work with, and you need those people to be able to really listen and not necessarily straight away give their input and suggestions and what they think, and definitely not sort of judge straight away, but be really good listeners and know what you're saying, and then perhaps offer some guidance or suggestions. Or just listen and let them sort of offload what they're thinking. It's really, really useful to have those people.
I think for us as well, it's been really important to like also not be afraid to have the hard conversations and kind of actually just being completely open and transparent, because I think if you hide things, especially on this sort of project, stuff gets missed, or like you don't approach something in the best scenario. So I think for us as well, like having just not being afraid to say what's on your mind, even if it's actually maybe a little bit offensive or like something you shouldn't say, like actually just saying it has a lot more power than keeping it in as well. I think it's quite important.
Do you agree? Are you happy to have the challenging conversations with Adam?
I think it was new to me at the start, but definitely now I'm much more comfortable having them. Yeah.
He's not going to enjoy the irony. He doesn't want to talk. I'm happy to have them. I don't want to talk about it.
No, I think that I've had a lot of personal growth already this year, and I don't know what the ocean's going to have in store in terms of personal growth, but I'm looking forward to that. And I do think there'll be some probably quite hard conversations. With both of us probably saying things, probably not finding the best words to say things, But
then that also comes down to it. We say that as well, of like, you just have to understand the other person's words might not be the best words choice, but you have to like be able to look at that from like an objective perspective. And kind of like words have like what am I trying to say? Words have like depth and meaning, but like actually, if someone's just trying to get someone off their chest and they don't know how to say it, it's like also accepting that maybe they're going to say something a bit crazy. But like, they're not meaning any harm by that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what's your advice around this, Toby? Because obviously, again, we all have to have hard conversations occasionally in life. Is it just about being transparent and honest? I mean, how do you start going about having
Yeah, I
those
think
conversations?
it takes a lot of courage and bravery for the person to sort of open up and start that conversation. And then a lot of the responsibility for the sort of success of it is on the other person who's listening. So kind of being non-judgmental, giving them space, and a good skill to do that we've actually worked on is sort of paraphrasing back what you've heard. So without adding anything in or adding your sort of judgment, just reflecting back what you've heard to the other person and saying, is that right? Or then that gives them the opportunity to perhaps change certain words or what they meant and clarify things. So it is sort of a skill that we've got to sort of get better at. But yeah, it's definitely something we need to work on for a lot of people.
You've obviously got some sponsorship from Juicin for the boat. Tell me a little bit about how Juicin are supporting the challenge.
So Juicins have supported massively. Obviously, they're our headliner, so they're kind of like a huge backbone for this whole project. They also came on board at a point where basically it was make or break for this whole thing to happen. So for us, like, they came on board and was like the switch of, right, we're sending it. Whereas just before they came on board, we were like, oh, this is really up in the air. So for us, in terms of like the project as a whole, they've basically had the key to make the whole thing happen and like have supported us. And yeah, it's been really, really useful for us having them on board, because we wouldn't be here or sat here with you now if they weren't with us.
As we, I'm going to segue beautifully here, as we draw towards the end of the podcast, do you allow yourself then to think about the final destination? Are you thinking about that kind of the finish line, or from that kind of psychological perspective, do you just have to think about this race in stages and just think one day to the next, one foot in front of the other? Or do you allow yourself to think about, oh, when we pull into the port in Antigua, it's going to be so brilliant?
I think I let myself think about it a little bit, the finish line, but then you look back like a week and you've still got 500 miles to row, and then you look back another week and you're 1,000 miles away, and then you look back, we'll be sort of 4 months away from the finish line now, and we've got, well, the whole thing ahead of us, and you can't imagine that, you can't visualize it all in one thought. So the only real way of looking at it is, for me in training, it's been one shift at a time, 2 hours at a time, and then even within that, sometimes a 2-hour shift feels awful. So you've got to look at, so then you take a step back to the next like few strokes, and like how, like your posture and driving with the legs, and it's just looking at it, compartmentalizing it into the smallest things is what kind of works for me, at least.
And what do you think?
I think I'd agree with that as well. I think definitely splitting it up. I think if we looked back a year ago and we tried to view it as one big thing, it would have just been too much to like even comprehend with all the bits we've had to do for this. So I think, yeah, it's just kind of, you know what the end goal is, but it's just kind of stepping stones one by one until you get there, really, and just trusting that it's going to work out.
So I guess it's just left for me to thank you all very much for taking part in the podcast today. Jamie and Adam, obviously, best of luck with everything. I think everybody who's listened to this podcast and who'll be watching your videos, obviously you're going to try and speak to us during the race as well, which we are very, very excited about. So huge luck to you guys. Toby, thank you so much as well for sharing your insights into mental resilience. I think you've talked about a lot of things that people listening to the podcast who, as I say, might not be doing a challenge as big as the Atlantic, but can take away some of the advice and thoughts that you've offered into how they improve their own mental resilience. So thank you very much, gents.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kevin.